It's the 83rd Annual Academy Awards, and the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences is coming off a successful rebound year after the Great Dark Knight debacle. After expanding the Best Picture nominations from 5 to 10, more audience-friendly hits did get nominations for Best Picture. Avatar, the highest-grossing film of the year, and all-time for a hot minute, was up for 9 Oscars, including Best Picture, taking home 3 awards. Other box office hits that were nominated for Best Picture included Inglourious Basterds, Up in the Air, District 9 was a surprise nomination, and what ultimately won the top prize?
And the winner is The Hurt Locker.
The lowest grossing Best Picture winner of them all. This was an especially hilarious outcome, as the whole reason the Academy expanded the Best Picture lineup in the first place was to try and get box office hits into the race, only for the movie no one had seen to get the top prize anyway. I guess we can chalk this up to that whole you can bring a horse to water thing. On an extremely positive note, Oscar history was made in a couple of ways. The most significant moment was when Kathryn Bigelow won Best Director for The Hurt Locker, the first time a woman ever won the top prize for directing. What's more, she beat her ex-husband James Cameron, who was nominated for directing Avatar, which added a little bit of sprinkles on top of the sundae that was her great night. Also historic was that Pixar's Up would be the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture since Beauty and the Beast, a feat that was 18 years overdue. Up would win 2 awards that night, Best Score and Best Animated Feature, which gave Pete Docter his long overdue Academy Award. Also, I left this part out of the last episode because it was getting to be too long as it was, but I would argue that Avatar is also an animated film, and that 2 animated films were nominated for Best Picture that year. Yeah, James Cameron denies it's an animated movie, as does most of the industry. But this is a film where over 85% of the movie was made with animation, and the 2 protagonists are animated for the majority of the film. Honestly, if this can be considered an animated film, there is little reason to call Avatar a live-action film. But I digress. By the end of the night, it was not only another year closed, but a decade closed, and it was the beginning of the 2010s. Sadly, for Best Animated Feature, the decade would start out stumbling, as thanks to a smaller release of animated films, as well as another disqualification, only 3 movies would be nominated for the Best Animated Feature category. That means snubs were inevitable, and there were some big ones. Although calling it Oscar-worthy would be a stretch, it may surprise you to find out that Despicable Me was not nominated for Best Animated Feature. Despite being a massive box office success and giving birth to the Minions, who would become the mascots of the relatively new animation studio Illumination, Despicable Me was passed over for a nomination. As far as independent animation goes, Idiots and Angels by Bill Plympton failed to get a nom. The movie was a dark adult comedy that most Academy members likely didn't see, but it would have made for an interesting nomination for the legendary animator. Despite having some success with live-action films, Zack Snyder's first foray into full-blown animation, Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole, did not net the now controversial director a nomination. DreamWorks' Megamind also failed to get into the race, but Jeffrey Katzenberg likely wasn't too upset about this movie not getting in, and you'll see why in a little bit. Another smaller animated film, My Dog Tulip, also did not receive a nomination, despite getting positive reviews from critics and featuring the voice talents of Christopher Plummer and Vanessa Redgrave in her final role before her death. The Green Ogre, who won the first Oscar for Best Animated Feature, was left out again, as many agreed that Shrek Forever After, while certainly better than Shrek the Third, showed that the franchise had run out of steam and would probably be better off in the realm of spin-off films. Mamoru Hosoda didn't catch the Academy's attention with Summer Wars, though he would have a more regular presence in years to come. The biggest surprise in the snubbed category was Tangled, the 50th full-length animated film from Disney. Despite a troubled production history that resulted in a massive $260 million budget, the movie was loved by critics and audiences alike, who felt the film had captured the golden age of Disney animation quite well. It even received an Oscar nomination for Best Song for I Saw the Light, which netted Alan Menken his 19th Oscar nomination. But the movie itself was left off the nominations list, where it certainly would have been there had there been at least 5 nominations. On a final note, It should be noted that Yogi Bear was submitted for consideration in the category, but was disqualified for not meeting the requirements of being a mostly animated film. I probably wouldn't have brought this up, except the same year Cats and Dogs: Revenge of Kitty Galore was submitted and did qualify for Best Animated Feature Film. Why? I don't know, but it's certainly an interesting trivia point to bring up. With all those snubs, what were the 3 movies that got into the race? The first nominee was How to Train Your Dragon, from DreamWorks Animation, directed by former Disney alumni Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois. The movie told the story about a young boy who befriends a dragon despite coming from a village of Vikings whose primary goal in life is hunting down the dragon's lair and killing them all. Though the film was slow to start at the box office, word of mouth carried the film to become a sleeper hit. Critics hailed it as DreamWorks' best movie in years, and the revolutionary 3D presentation kept the film in IMAX 3D theaters for months after the fact. The movie had such strong legs that it wasn't even released on DVD until 10 months after its release, an unusually long window from theatrical to home video. Many critics noted that the quality of the movie was equal to that of a Pixar film, and the movie even picked up a surprise second nomination for Best Score, of which John Powell was responsible for composing. The second nomination was for The Illusionist by Sylvain Chomet. Chomet's follow-up to his Oscar-nominated film The Triplets of Belleville, The Illusionist was based on an unproduced script by acclaimed French director Jacques Tati, who was the director of many acclaimed French comedies, including Mon Oncle, which won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film in 1958. The history of the script is dogged in much controversy, and that controversy may be worthy of a video unto itself. And if you'd like to see it, leave a like and comment below letting me know. But on the surface, the movie tells the story of a magician who is finding his magic act increasingly falling out of favor with a public that is becoming more modern as time goes by. With the exception of a young girl who still believes magic is real, the magician finds his purpose in life in serious doubt, while a young girl starts to find her way into womanhood. Dialogue-free and made with traditional hand-drawn animation, The Illusionist was a welcome nomination by the animation community. Rounding out the nominees as the third nomination was, poetically, Toy Story 3. Directed by Lee Unkrich, Toy Story 3 was positioned as the final installment of the Toy Story trilogy. This is actually a movie John Lasseter wanted to make for a long time, but couldn't because of the contractual disputes between Steve Jobs and Michael Eisner, of which the success of Toy Story 2 was at the center of. Since then, Disney, now under the leadership of Bob Iger, had purchased Pixar in an all-stock deal, and Pixar could finally get to work on the movie. Now being the chief creative officer and overseeing multiple studios at the company, Lasseter took a producing role while Unkrich directed. As usual, Pixar's latest effort was met with glowing reviews, with many considering it the best of the 3, though, spoiler alert, I don't exactly share that sentiment, but we'll discuss that later. But would the sequel adverse Academy give Pixar another gold statue? A new decade was upon us and another race was on. The show began with co-hosts James Franco and Anne Hathaway utterly bombing in the opening sketch and getting worse as the show went on. No, seriously, this was probably the worst Oscar hosting since David Letterman hosted in the 90s. Let's watch them do this one joke in the intro to highlight just how bad the hosting was.
That'd be weird if my mom called me Academy Award winner James Franco. I've known her a long time.
Is your mom here tonight?
I think, yeah, she's somewhere.
My mom's here too. Hi, Mom. Hi. My mom, everybody. You look so beautiful, Mom.
Oh, thank you, honey. Annie, honey,
Yeah?
stand up straight. Mr. Steven Spielberg's here, honey.
Really, Mom? In front of a billion people? You're gonna do that?
I'm sorry.
Okay, I take the note, Mom. I take the note. Please sit down.
My grandma's here too. How am I doing, Grandma?
I just saw Marky Mark.
No, Grandma. That's actually Mark Wahlberg, Academy Award nominee.
This stupid back and forth goes on for almost 4 whole minutes. Let's just move on. Most of us have already. Tom Hanks brought some much needed comfort by awarding Best Art Direction to Alice in Wonderland. Hanks did a double presenting duty by announcing that Inception was the winner of a much deserved Oscar for Best Cinematography. Afterwards, Melissa Leo won Best Supporting Actress for her turn in The Fighter, dropping the F-bomb during her speech for a memorable moment, though she would later admit on that this wasn't as accidental as she made it look on stage. Well, she likely felt like she had to do something like this after Kirk Douglas ended up being more entertaining than the hosts by basically screwing with the actresses by delaying reading the winner from the envelope.
This is the moment, if I get this, you know, you're still laughing. Colin Firth is laughing. You know, I will never forget this moment.
That's funny, I don't care who you are.
Finally, it was time for animation to get the spotlight, but they presented the award for Best Animated Short Film first, which went to The Lost Thing. Afterwards, there was no banter or clever one-liners. Presenters Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis announced the nominees for Best Animated Feature and, ultimately, the winner.
And the Oscar goes to... Be pretty cool if I was Banksy, though, right?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Toy Story 3, The Unkrich.
And for the 4th year in a row, Pixar took home the gold. Not only did Lee Unkrich receive his first competitive Oscar, but the first sequel had won an Academy Award in Best Animated Feature. With only 3 nominations, how did Toy Story 3 walk away with the win? What were the reasons Pixar's winning streak continued? Here are the 10 reasons as to why Toy Story 3 won the gold. Number 1, great reviews. Let's speed through the first 2 because they are sort of a given now, but while none of the nominated films had bad reviews, Toy Story 3 had the best of the bunch. At 98% critics rating and a 90% audience rating as of this recording, Toy Story 3 was easily the best reviewed of the 3 movies. And with great reviews came the typical exceptional box office. While Toy Story movies have always done well in theaters, this one beat all expectations and grossed more than $1 billion. This was a new record for the franchise, and when that many people are seeing your movie, that almost makes it too big to ignore. But great reviews and box office are pretty typical for Pixar films at this point. What were some of the lesser known reasons Toy Story 3 stood out? Number 3, Tangled wasn't nominated. Look, I'm not suggesting that Tangled would have actually won had it been nominated, but it likely helped Disney that it wasn't nominated in Best Animated Feature. If it had been, Disney would have had to mount 2 campaigns for 2 movies. Not only that, but there would have been a huge temptation to lean more into promoting Tangled, because while Pixar was obviously on a huge winning streak, Disney themselves hadn't won this category yet. And that was becoming a sore point for the studio that made the Best Picture nominated Beauty and the Beast. Finally, had both been nominated, Tangled certainly would have taken some of the votes. And while there are still 2 other movies to get votes, some of the advantages Toy Story 3 had this year, Tangled would also have in a different way. So it would have created a headache for Disney and voters. It may have even created enough of a vote split that the likely 3rd nominee, How to Train Your Dragon, could have swept in with a surprise win. With Tangled out of the loop though, Disney could focus all their attention on pushing Toy Story 3. Number 4, heavy nostalgia. One of the big advantages Toy Story 3 had was undoubtedly the nostalgia factor. Keep in mind, the first movie came out in 1995. And by 2010, a whole generation of kids had grown up on it. Many members of the Academy likely had fond memories of taking their own kids to the previous movies, and everyone watching Toy Story 3 felt like they had returned to visit old friends. Remember that voters are people too, and Toy Story 3 brought a lot of memories back for a lot of people, including Academy voters. Number 5, the emotional opening and ending. Alright, remember how I said the opening 8 minutes played a crucial role in upwinning Best Animated Feature because it was that emotional the previous year? Well, Toy Story 3 not only had a strong opening 10 minutes, but the final 10 minutes were equally heartbreaking, if not more so than Up's opening was. The reports of audiences crying during the movie were not exaggerated. I was there at 2 screenings, and there was much crying at both of them. Heck, I was crying during those screenings as well, and that kind of emotional response is difficult to ignore. Now, personally, I don't think the middle of the movie is as strong as the opening and closing, as I feel it doesn't have much to do with what the core of the movie is about. That being said, many people also liked that aspect and felt that Lotso Bear was one of Pixar's most complex antagonists. Still, had the beginning and end not been as strong as they were, I think reviews would have been very good, but not as static. Number 6, aggressive campaigning. Although campaigning for Oscars is not exactly a secret, Disney pulled out all the stops in promoting Toy Story 3 to win as many of the awards it was nominated for. This campaign was so aggressive that it actually contributed to our next 2 reasons for why Toy Story 3 won. Number 7, the Best Animated Feature category wasn't around for Toy Story 1 and 2. While it goes without saying, the Best Animated Feature Oscar was not around when the first 2 Toy Story movies were released, and so there was no chance they could have won those. Disney was almost too aggressive in pointing it out, painting this as it's not fair this award wasn't around for these movies, but now that it's around for this one, you can make up for that lack of presence. Alright, no ad campaign actually said this, but if you were around at the time, this was very much a talking point on blog sites and with animation fans, and Disney did take this narrative and lean into it in one major way. Number 8, the last chance narrative. The discussions about how Best Animated Feature Award wasn't around for the first 2 movies eventually led to the discussion that Toy Story 3 was going to be the end of the trilogy, the high point, and there would be no more after this. Hey, no one said the joke was annoying yet in the comments, so I'm still running with it, and it seemed particularly appropriate here. Look, while it now appears this series will never actually end, Disney leaned hard into the advertising that this was it. This was the final Toy Story movie. Part of that was likely to guilt voters into voting for Toy Story 3, which not only had the narrative that the first 2 movies had no chance to compete, but that this would be the final chance the Academy would have to award Toy Story an Oscar. And that was a pretty powerful marketing ploy they had. Number 9, multiple Oscar nominations and wins. And ultimately, it worked because the movie would receive 5 Oscar nominations, the same amount Up received the previous year. And like the previous year, there were big nominations as well as a win or 2. First, the movie received a nomination for Best Sound Editing. It also received that much coveted nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay, of which Michael Arndt, John Lasseter, Andrew Stanton, and Lee Unkrich were the recipients. Although I have to comment that it seems weird that the movie was an adapted screenplay just because it had characters from a previous movie, but whatever, this is the Academy we're talking about. Then the movie won Randy Newman his 2nd Oscar for Best Song for We Belong Together, and delivered another hilarious speech that you should check out if you haven't already. And of course, it won Best Animated Feature Film, netting Lee Unkrich his first Academy Award. But it was that 5th nomination that made the world of difference. Number 10, Toy Story 3 was nominated for Best Picture. Yes, for the 2nd year in a row, Pixar cracked the Best Picture race. Interestingly, I thought Toy Story 3 would have a decent chance at winning the top prize, despite my personal 3-star review of the film. It had the backing of major Hollywood talent and sites claiming that this would be a great time for the Academy to give an animated film Best Picture, because who was going to complain about Toy Story winning Best Picture? Heck, some would probably replace Braveheart's Best Picture win with Toy Story if they could. Alas, it was also a pretty competitive year. The movie was up against powerhouses like Inception, The Social Network, True Grit, and the ultimate winner, The King's Speech. Alright, look, I love that movie, but it is pretty strange to think that won Best Picture over all of these other great films. But getting back to our topic, there was no way Toy Story 3 wasn't losing in Best Animated Feature when it had a Best Picture nomination in the corner. When you take that with the franchise overdue status, Toy Story 3 was unlikely to lose, though I suspect How to Train Your Dragon was a very close second. Ultimately, few were surprised that Pixar won again, and it was around this time that people were starting to wonder if the award was slanted in Pixar's favor. This conversation would have to wait, though, as Pixar would actually sit the following year out, and DreamWorks would come back into the race strong with 2 contenders, along with 2 independent films and a movie from Nickelodeon that would surprise everyone. I'll see you all next time. Hey, you made it to the end. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Just a few more things. First of all, the names that you see on the screen, these are our Patreon and YouTube member supporters, and I thank each and every one of them. Their support helps me make exclusive videos for Patreon and YouTube members, as well as keep the channel running, and of course is just of huge kindness to me. Also, don't forget to check out the iCritic-led podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Deezer, whatever podcasting service you listen to, it is there. We definitely want to see you there. And hey, there's also other videos that you can check out. So, check out these other channels, these other videos, especially that one. I think that's a really good one.